Today, we're counting down the 10 worst movie actors in Hollywood history. Number 10. Cameron Diaz. Cameron Diaz is one of the most recognizable faces of 2000s Hollywood. She brought energy, charisma, and undeniable screen presence. She dominated romantic comedies, landed massive paychecks, and headlined major studio films. But when you take away the charm, the smile, and the star power, many critics argue that the actual acting often failed to match the hype. To be clear, Cameron Diaz is likable, relatable, and magnetic. But acting? That's where the trouble begins. When charisma replaces technique. Diaz's performances often felt like extensions of her real-life persona, bubbly, quirky, energetic, but rarely transformative. In many roles, she didn't disappear into a character, the character disappeared into her. Whether it was Charlie's Angels, Night and Day, or The Other Woman, Diaz delivered the same facial expressions, the same comedic rhythms, and the same type of emotional beats. Audiences loved her personality, but critics consistently pointed out the lack of depth. Drama was her kryptonite. While she thrived in comedic roles, drama exposed the weaknesses. In Gangs of New York, she stood beside Daniel Day-Lewis, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Brendan Gleeson, all heavyweight performers. The contrast was harsh. Her accent wavered. Her emotional delivery felt forced. Her scenes lacked intensity next to actors operating at the highest level of craft. It's not that she didn't try, it's that the dramatic demands exceeded her acting range. Action roles didn't help either. Charlie's Angels made her an action star, but insiders admitted she struggled with choreography, stunts, and serious physical scenes. Instead, the films leaned into comedy and personality, not performance. So why is she on this list? Because in terms of pure acting technique, versatility, emotional depth, character immersion, Cameron Diaz repeatedly landed major leading roles without ever delivering the type of performance that justifies Hollywood's highest paychecks. She became a movie star, yes, but one of Hollywood's worst actual actors? According to countless critics, yes. And yet, people still love her. Sometimes charisma wins more hearts than talent ever could. Number 9. Zac Efron. Zac Efron had one of the most explosive teenage breakout careers in modern Hollywood. High School Musical made him a global icon. His looks, charm, and voice set him up as the next big thing. Studios threw opportunities at him. Magazines called him the future of Hollywood. But the problem wasn't fame. It wasn't expectations. It was the fact that Efron never fully developed into a dependable actor, even after almost 2 decades in the industry. The pretty boy trap. Efron has spoken openly about Hollywood refusing to take him seriously, and in many ways, the criticism wasn't unfair. His early roles relied on good looks, smile-heavy acting, and a polished Disney-friendly presence. When he tried to transition into mature roles, the emotional depth just wasn't there. Films like Charlie St. Cloud and We Are Your Friends demanded vulnerability, but the performances felt surface level, like Efron was acting vulnerability instead of actually accessing it. Comedy exposed his limitations. In comedies such as Baywatch, Neighbors, and Dirty Grandpa, Efron was supposed to play the hot guy who can also be funny. But whenever the script required genuine comedic timing or improvisational rhythm, he fell flat next to co-stars like Seth Rogen and Dave Franco. Critics repeatedly commented on his stiffness, a disconnect between his physicality and emotional delivery. His most praised role still shows the problem. Even in Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile, where Efron played Ted Bundy, the performance was largely praised for his resemblance to Bundy. Not the acting, not the emotional range, not the nuance. It was the casting choice, not the craft, that carried him. So why is he on this list? Zac Efron is talented in many ways. He works hard, he trains physically, he pushes himself. But acting is a craft that demands vulnerability, emotional truth, and character transformation. Efron often plays versions of himself, charming, confident, polished, while more complex roles escape him. He's not a bad person. He's not even a bad performer. He's just an example of how Hollywood sometimes confuses looks with talent, and how audiences eventually notice the difference. Number 8. Cara Delevingne. Cara Delevingne is one of those celebrities whose fame arrived before the acting career ever began. She dominated runways, became the face of luxury brands, and built a massive following. So, naturally, Hollywood wanted her. The only problem? She wasn't ready. Instant fame doesn't build acting skills. When Cara transitioned from modeling to acting, studios made a classic mistake, assuming charisma and popularity would translate into film performance. But acting requires training, experience, and emotional technique, none of which she had. Suicide Squad was the breaking point. Her performance as Enchantress became one of the most criticized comic book portrayals of all time. The whispery voice, the unusual body movements, the CGI-dependent presence, none of it connected. It felt more like a music video performance than a character grounded in story. Even Critics' Choice noted that the role felt like a costume wearing a character rather than an actor creating one. The problem of emotional flatness. In movies like Paper Towns and Valerian and The City of a Thousand Planets, Cara struggled with emotional delivery. Lines came off monotone, scenes lacked weight, dramatic moments didn't land. It wasn't from lack of effort, but from lack of technique. Why is she on this list? Cara Delevingne is a powerful figure in fashion, a massive social influencer, a cultural icon in her own right. But in acting, she's a reminder that Hollywood sometimes casts fame instead of skill, and the audience always notices.
Number 7. Ashton Kutcher.
Ashton Kutcher is one of the most fascinating cases in modern Hollywood. On one hand, he's incredibly smart. He's a successful entrepreneur. He's a sharp producer. He built companies, invested early in giants, and helped shape the tech industry. But when it comes to acting, that's where everything changes. Kutcher became famous for That 70s Show, where his goofy, airheaded character, Michael Kelso, made him a household name. But Kelso wasn't a stretch. It wasn't a transformation. It wasn't a masterclass in character acting. It was Ashton Kutcher being a sillier version of Ashton Kutcher. Comedy roles limited his range. Kutcher excelled in slapstick and exaggerated comedy, but whenever a script required nuance, timing, tone, emotional honesty, he slipped. Movies like Dude, Where's My Car?, Just Married, or What Happens in Vegas showcased his charisma, but not his talent. He always felt like the same guy. Same facial expressions, same comedic delivery, same over-the-top reactions. Drama exposed his weaknesses. The biggest example was Jobs, where he played Steve Jobs. This was his chance to prove critics wrong, to show he could carry a dramatic film and embody one of the most intense personalities in history. Instead, reviewers pointed out that Kutcher mimicked Jobs' walk, posture, and mannerisms, but never captured the emotional complexity behind the man. It felt like an impersonation, not a performance, a copy, not a character. He looked like Steve Jobs. He moved like Steve Jobs, but he didn't feel like Steve Jobs. The problem with stiff delivery. Kutcher has always struggled with line delivery. Everything feels a bit too sharp, too staged, too rehearsed, as if he's aware of the camera and trying to be funny instead of letting the comedy flow through the scene. Even in romantic comedies, he relied more on charm and physical presence than acting craft. Why he makes this list? Kutcher is not untalented. He's simply better at everything except acting. He's gifted in business, social causes, and comedic hosting, but when he steps into a dramatic or cinematic role, the weaknesses become impossible to ignore. He's proof that Hollywood sometimes confuses likability with performance and gives major roles to people whose strengths lie far away from the screen. Number 6. Katherine Heigl. No actress in Hollywood history fell from grace quite as dramatically as Katherine Heigl. For a brief moment, she was everywhere. Rom-com queen, box office favorite, beloved face of Grey's Anatomy. But Katherine Heigl wasn't just controversial behind the scenes. On camera, her acting consistently struggled to rise above average and sometimes dropped below it. The problem with repetition. Heigl often played the same character, the tightly wound, career-focused, slightly neurotic woman who learns to loosen up by the end. 27 Dresses, The Ugly Truth, Life as We Know It, Killers. Over and over, she delivered the same mannerisms. The nervous laugh, the exasperated sighs, the wide-eyed reactions, and the familiar rom-com tone that never changed. Audiences loved her at first until they realized she wasn't evolving. Weak dramatic range. On Grey's Anatomy, Heigl had powerful scenes, but they were often overshadowed by co-stars like Sandra Oh, Chandra Wilson, and Ellen Pompeo, who carried emotional arcs with far more depth. Heigl's delivery sometimes felt melodramatic, with overplayed crying scenes and moments that felt forced rather than grounded in real emotion. Box office collapse. By the time she appeared in One for the Money and Unforgettable, critics almost immediately dismissed her performances as predictable, stiff, or one note. Her acting became the symbol of the rom-com era's decline, not because she lacked skill, but because she lacked growth. Why she's on this list? Katherine Heigl isn't a terrible actress. She simply became trapped in a cycle of repetitive roles that highlighted her weaknesses instead of her strengths. She had charisma, but not enough range. She had talent, but not enough adaptability. Hollywood evolved, and she didn't. Number 5. Gerard Butler. Gerard Butler is a force of nature on screen. Loud, intense, physical, confident. He exploded into Hollywood in 300, where he delivered one of the most iconic lines in movie history. "This is Sparta." But after that, that's where the problems start. Action roles became repetitive. After 300, Butler fell into a pattern. Tough guy with a gun, saving the world, shouting orders, surviving explosions. Olympus has fallen, London has fallen, Angel has fallen, Plane, Hunter-Killer. The movies blended together. His performances blended even more. He plays every scene at the same emotional pitch, intense, aggressive, stoic, leaving little room for depth. Rom-com roles didn't work either. With The Ugly Truth, The Bounty Hunter, and Playing for Keeps, Hollywood attempted to brand him as a romantic leading man. But Butler's delivery in rom-coms was often awkward, stiff, or emotionally disconnected. He had chemistry issues with co-stars. His comedic timing felt off. His charm didn't translate into the softer, more playful tones those films needed. Accent struggles. Butler's attempts at American accents became a running joke among critics. Sometimes it slipped mid-sentence. Sometimes it faded completely. Sometimes it sounded like 3 different regions at once. It's not unusual for actors to struggle with accents, but Butler's inconsistency became one of the most frequently criticized elements of his performances. When he tries drama, it falls flat. Movies like Machine Gun Preacher and Law-Abiding Citizen gave Butler a chance to prove he could deliver emotionally complex roles, but the performances felt uneven. Some moments landed, others felt overly theatrical or disconnected. He shines in intensity, not vulnerability. Why he's on this list? Gerard Butler is a hard worker, a committed performer, and a reliable action star. But in terms of pure acting technique, he remains limited, repetitive, and inconsistent. Critics have noted the same weaknesses for over a decade, and Hollywood has simply adjusted by giving him roles where acting matters less than presence. He's not the worst actor, he's just nowhere near the best. Number 4, Channing Tatum. Channing Tatum might be one of the most charming personalities in Hollywood. He's self-aware, he's funny in interviews, he's down to earth, and he's built an impressive career based on hard work, physical talent, and sheer likability. But acting. That's the conversation critics have never been gentle about. Tatum became famous not because of complex performances, but because of his physical presence and screen appeal. And over time, it became clear that his strength was never in emotional depth. It was in being an approachable, easy-to-watch movie star. The wooden early years. His early performances in films like Step Up, She's the Man, and G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra revealed severe limitations. His line delivery was stiff, his expressions felt restricted, and many moments played unintentionally flat. Directors often adjusted scripts around him rather than relying on him to carry dialogue-heavy scenes. He shined in comedy, but why? Ironically, some of Tatum's best performances came from comedy, especially 21 Jump Street and 22 Jump Street. These films succeeded because they embraced his limitations instead of hiding them. Tatum didn't need to be a great actor, he just needed to be himself, a well-meaning, slightly clueless, lovable character whose innocence created humor. Comedy let him relax, stop trying to act, and simply flow with the moment. Drama was a struggle. When Hollywood pushed him into dramatic roles, the cracks showed. In films like Dear John, The Vow, and Foxcatcher, Tatum attempted emotional vulnerability, but often delivered scenes with a monotone quality or a forced intensity that didn't quite connect. In Foxcatcher, his physical performance received praise, but the emotional delivery was overshadowed by co-stars like Steve Carell and Mark Ruffalo, who operated on a different level of subtlety and depth. Limited range. Tatum excels in physical roles, dancers, soldiers, fighters, athletes, because they rely less on dialogue and more on presence. But when a role requires complex psychological storytelling, Tatum consistently falls short. He doesn't transform into characters. He adjusts them to fit himself. Why he's on this list? Channing Tatum isn't a bad person, far from it. He's admired, respected, and loved by many. But his acting career is a reminder that Hollywood sometimes elevates charisma over craft. He's a movie star, yes, but not a strong actor. His successes came from leaning into personality, not performance. And in a list focused strictly on acting technique, that places him firmly in the top 4. Number 3, Gal Gadot. Few modern actors have risen to global stardom as quickly as Gal Gadot. She became a cultural symbol, a feminist icon, a worldwide representative of empowerment and strength. Wonder Woman turned her into one of the most recognizable faces on Earth. But fame and acting ability are two different things,
and critics have consistently pointed out the gap between Gadot's image and her performances. The Marvel vs. DC shockwave. Casting an ex-model and pageant winner as Wonder Woman was controversial from the start. But when she debuted in Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice, audiences embraced her presence, not her acting. She looked the part, she carried herself like a warrior, she had undeniable screen impact. But when she delivered lines or emotional moments, that's where the performance struggled. The accent problem. Gal Gadot's natural accent is beautiful, but it limits her range. In dramatic scenes, her line delivery often sounds stiff, rehearsed, or disconnected from the emotional weight of the moment. The rhythm of her speech can feel unnatural for English-language dramatic acting. This became most visible in Wonder Woman 1984, where the emotional scenes felt flat despite strong directing and high stakes. Limited emotional expression. Gal Gadot has a narrow emotional range on screen. Slight smile, slight frown, heroic seriousness. But deep sadness, raw anger, grief, panic, or complex vulnerability rarely come across convincingly. This isn't about effort. She tries. It's about technique. The ability to internalize emotional truth and project it through micro-expression.
The one-note criticism. In films like Red Notice, Heart of Stone, and Fast and Furious, Gadot consistently plays a variation of the same character. Confident, poised, flirtatious, and calm. Hollywood keeps giving her roles that rely on looks, charm, and presence, not acting range. When she steps outside that comfort zone, such as in heavier emotional roles, the disconnect becomes clear. The performance comes off more like reading lines than embodying a character. A star, not an actress? Gadot is an icon, a symbol, a force. But critics argue that she's a celebrity whose fame outpaced her acting ability. A case where the image sold the films, not the performance inside them. Why she's number 3. Gal Gadot's place on this list isn't about disrespect. It's about the reality of her craft. She has power, presence, and cultural impact, but she lacks the emotional nuance and technical skill to thrive in demanding roles. Her superstardom remains unquestioned. Her acting? That's where the debate continues. Number 2, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Dwayne Johnson is one of the most recognizable celebrities on the planet. He's a businessman, a fitness icon, a marketing machine, a box office juggernaut, and one of the hardest working entertainers Hollywood has ever seen. But acting? That's where the story turns. For almost 2 decades, critics, directors, and even some fans have pointed out the same truth. Dwayne Johnson is a global superstar, but not a strong actor. Every role feels the same. Whether he's playing a jungle explorer, a tough dad, a helicopter pilot, an ex-athlete, a super soldier, or literally a god, he plays them all exactly the same. Same eyebrow raise, same smirk, same tough guy one-liners, same action hero confidence, same emotional beats. The Rock doesn't transform into characters. Characters transform into The Rock. The brand first problem. Dwayne Johnson built a billion-dollar personal brand. But that brand limits him. He can't look weak. He can't look fragile. He can't be the villain. He can't lose fights on screen. He can't show vulnerability unless it's controlled and polished. This means every script must bend around him. Characters aren't written, they're engineered to protect his market value. So instead of acting, he's performing a persona. The emotional flatness. Films like San Andreas, Rampage, Skyscraper, and Hobbs and Shaw
gave him moments where emotional depth was required: grief, fear, desperation. But the expressions rarely change. The emotional delivery rarely lands. The vulnerability never feels real. His dramatic scenes often feel like someone reading a motivational speech, rather than experiencing human emotion. Comedy doesn't save him. Although he's charismatic, his comedic timing depends heavily on co-stars. In Central Intelligence, Kevin Hart carried the rhythm. In Jumanji, Jack Black delivered the strongest actual performance. In Red Notice, Ryan Reynolds handled the humor. He's funny, but not through acting. He's funny because he's Dwayne Johnson. Action hero to action template. Even the action scenes became predictable. Punch, glare, catchphrase, jump from impossible height, walk away from explosion without flinching. It's entertaining, but it's not transformative acting. The Black Adam fallout. Black Adam was supposed to be Dwayne Johnson's legacy role, his statement that he could anchor a superhero universe. Instead, the acting was criticized as stiff, the emotional scenes fell flat, the character lacked depth, the film underperformed, the entire DC plan collapsed. Critics called it a charisma-based performance with no character behind it. Why he's number 2. Dwayne Johnson is a superstar, a beast of effort, a cultural phenomenon. But when judged purely on acting ability, emotional range, character transformation, vulnerability, dramatic nuance, he ranks near the bottom. The Rock is everywhere. He just isn't evolving. Number 1, Vin Diesel. And now we reach the top or the bottom of the list. Vin Diesel, the gravel-voiced face of the Fast and Furious empire, the man behind Family, and one of Hollywood's most puzzling leading men. Vin Diesel isn't just a limited actor. He's a symbol of how far charisma, voice, and marketing can take someone even without true acting ability behind it. The emotional range issue. Vin Diesel delivers almost every line with the same tone. Deep, slow, intense, whisper growl, dramatic pause, stare into the distance. Whether he's angry, sad, scared, or happy, it all sounds identical. He has one setting, stoic intensity, and refuses to shift away from it. The Fast and Furious problem. The Fast franchise turned Vin Diesel into a global icon, but it also locked him into a performance bubble. Dominic Toretto is written like an invincible superhero. Never wrong, never scared, never losing, never questioning, always wise, always loyal. This meant Diesel never needed to grow as an actor. He just had to stand still and look powerful. Directors and writers shaped the films around his limitations. Short lines, few emotional close-ups, minimal complex dialogue, heavy reliance on family speeches. Diesel didn't adapt to Hollywood. Hollywood adapted to him. Attempts at serious acting failed. When he tried real drama, the cracks became undeniable. Find Me Guilty? Critics called the performance cartoonish. A Man Apart? Emotional scenes felt forced and unconvincing. Babylon AD? Wooden, flat, monotone. The Last Witch Hunter? Same facial expression in every scene. Diesel struggled whenever a movie required inner emotional life. Behind-the-scenes conflicts. Multiple directors and co-stars, including Dwayne Johnson, complained about Vin's work ethic, professionalism, ego, and creative control. When actors can't collaborate, the performance often suffers. It becomes rigid, mechanical, and self-focused. Why Vin Diesel is number one? Because when you strip away the stunt doodles, the explosions, the marketing, the franchise loyalty, the muscle cars, the family speeches, you're left with an actor who hasn't evolved in over 20 years. Vin Diesel is iconic, yes, but not for acting. He's iconic because he became a character and he never changed. He takes the number one spot not out of cruelty, but out of reality. No major actor in modern Hollywood has done less with more opportunities. Thanks for watching. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a new upload from Star Hour USA. We'll see you in the next story.